BlackBusters.
What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of BlackBusters, the best black movie podcast review podcast in the world. Craig. I'm your host, Tone, aka Jimmy Tones, for this episode. I'm joined as always by my good man, my partner in crime and film, podcast host extraordinaire, brother Andrew Tyree.
Yeah, aka Andrew Westside till I die.
Westside till you die, huh?
Tyree. Yeah, I'm inspired, brother. I crip walk all day today.
That's almost like an evil laugh. And we're staying evil because it's the month of October. So we've been staying on point and on theme with Halloween spooky episodes. We're going to get into this week's episode, but a reminder that next week we're going to be watching The First Purge. And the title might throw you guys a little bit off. I don't want you to watch The First Purge in the sense of the first movie that ever came out. That's not the ask here. What we're referring to is the movie The First Purge that came out in 2018. So if you're going to watch ahead of schedule, ahead of the podcast, that's the Purge that we're watching. We're watching the one with all the black people.
I love that. Wait a minute. I didn't know that the fans of the show were doing that. Are they watching along with us? That's amazing.
Well, I mean, it's something that we're encouraging. That's why we're why we are previewing what's coming up. Like what used to happen just a couple of weeks back is that they'd show up on Monday and they wouldn't know what movie we were reviewing. Or if they follow us on social, which you should be doing, they would maybe find out on like a Friday. So I figure, if they want to go ahead and do their homework before the episode, fans of the show, folks that have been rocking with us have an opportunity to watch ahead of time so that their takes are as refreshed as our takes.
I love that. It's like a group project. I love it.
We're trying to build community here. And listen, I'm absolutely have feeling the response. I know last episode, Attack the Block. I mean, I loved it. You loved it. But I feel like we did the community a service because there were some people that weren't familiar with the movie. And were like, what is this? Is it a BlackBuster? And I hope they watched it because that would reinforce that we know what we're doing around here in terms of the films that we choose.
100%. And I know me as a film head, I enjoy having an actor that I like and then figuring out where they came from. Where'd they start? How'd they break in? That, even if you hadn't seen the film, but you were a fan of John Boyega. I hope you went back and watched for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into this week's movie. This week we are doing Bones. Bones came out in 2001. It's a supernatural black horror film directed by Ernest Dickerson. We'll come back to him. Stars Snoop Dogg, stars Pam Grier, Khalil Kain, Clifton Powell, the forever young Bianca Lawson. And it is a certified kind of horror blackbuster. It's been a while since I watched Bones. What are some of your first takes, some of your early takes in terms of what you thought about the movie?
Never seen it.
You've never seen Bones before, huh?
I had never seen Bones before. I dip into the horror genre here and there, but I don't consider myself like a horror aficionado. Like I haven't seen all of them. Sometimes I'd be too scared. I like to watch my horror movies during the daytime. Yeah. And I like them to be lightweight horror. So like skinny margarita horror. You know what I mean? I don't like too much
low calorie
horror.
Low calorie horror.
Yeah. Smart pop horror is what I want.
That's so funny.
So I hadn't seen it, and just upon looking at it, I was not ready. I was ready to not enjoy it.
Okay.
I was like, this is going to be some hacky, campy, Snoop isn't really an actor like that. Those were my first thoughts before I turned the movie on.
Okay. Stick a pin in that. I want to talk about the director of the movie, Ernest Dickerson. If this name doesn't ring a bell maybe it should. Eric Dickerson is known for being a frequent collaborator with Spike Lee. He was behind the camera for a bunch of Spike Lee directed films. She's Gotta Have It, School Days, Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, Jungle Fever, and Malcolm X. And Dickerson is most known as a director for the classic blockbuster Juice. So the man absolutely has what I would say is the right credentials. And this brings me to one of my first takes in terms of what I think about this film. I started to think about football.
Okay.
Now in football, when the team wins, the quarterback gets all the glory, right? Quarterback gets all the glory when the team wins. Even though there's an offensive coordinator, even though there's a offensive line, even though the wide receivers have to run their routes and catch the ball. When the team wins, quarterback gets all of the credit. When the team loses, though, the quarterback gets all the blame. And that doesn't always seem right. That doesn't always seem fair. Because again, the offensive line has to protect. The wide receivers have to run their routes. They have to catch the ball. And the offensive coordinator has to call the right plays. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's this connection? Bones has a great director. The director in Bones is great. I feel like shot for shot, it was filmed well. It did not look bootleg, even though, like, you know, special effects budgets are special effects budgets. It is what it is. This movie had good actors in it. So we had good actors. I thought that, like, Snoop for that role was just fine. I felt that the acting was okay. What this movie really suffers from is the story makes no damn sense. The story in Bones sabotages what could have been a good movie. Because despite the fact that the story sucks, and we're going to get into it, we have to tear it apart. It was shot really well. So I was still, like, genuinely, like, on edge. Like, I was genuinely, like, kind of scared. And then there's a moment where the movie jumps the shark and I'm like, okay, I'm done. Yeah. But overall, you know, I don't blame Ernest Dickerson. You know, a director sometimes has to work with what he has. And that's in terms of acting. And that's in terms of, like, screenplay. I don't think that the director made poor decisions in this movie. I actually think that Ernest Dickerson did a damn good job in what is visually represented on the screen. But I do think that screenplay and story, like, failed and sabotaged a movie that I think has a pretty dope premise and could work. As an actor, challenge or affirm that the idea that Dickerson is not at fault with the flaws of Bones. It's the story. Do you agree with my sentiment, or do you challenge me on it?
I'm gonna resist the urge to be wishy-washy here, because I want to be wishy-washy. I want to say yes and no, but I'm gonna give you affirmation and be on your side, because as an actor, you're beholden to the same things. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you'll see a actor who you know is a decent actor or a good actor, and you'll be like, man, that performance was trash. But if you really break it down, it could be the writers. It could be the stuff they gave him to say. He had to say something weird, and you're like, why would he? You know, it's not his fault that the writers made him say that. Right. You also don't know what happens after you're done. As an actor, you're the first person to leave. Like, you show up, you do your thing, put stuff on tape, and you leave, and you might have given 4 takes for this scene, but somebody else is going to choose which take to use. Right. What to leave on the cutting room floor. So what you end up seeing as a moviegoer might not have been that actor's best take. It might have been the decision of an editor or a director after the fact. So yeah, most likely, given everything that this director has done before and all the good work he's put out, I would say that most likely this movie falling short is not his fault.
Okay, absolutely. So let's get into the overall plot and premise of the movie. In 1979, Jimmy Bones is like a neighborhood. The description says he's a numbers runner. He looks like a pimp.
Can I just jump in there real quick? Because who walks like a duck and talks like a duck. Because the thing is, like, you're seeing a pimp, and you're seeing a gangster, and then in the beginning, I had to rewind it because I was like, he said something about numbers. He walked up to somebody and he's like, "Hey man, pick your numbers," and I was like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" Like, I had to rewind it, and I was like, "Oh, he's running numbers." Like, they didn't. That's the mistake number one. You did not have to make him a numbers runner.
I mean, if you make him a numbers runner, put him in a numbers runner's uniform, right? He's dressed for the away team. He's dressed like a pimp, you know. And so I don't know. Everybody just had cons. Coincidentally, I just finished listening to the audiobook "Pimp" by Iceberg Slim. So I'm you know, this weird shit happening with me all the time. But yeah, so he's supposed to be like a beloved neighborhood lovable numbers runner, who is all about, you know, the community. Ain't nothing wrong with the lottery. He's got an inexplicable. This is one of my first hot takes. What's up with the size and scale of the abandoned house, right? like it's clearly a 2-story. It's clearly a 2-story church, maybe even just like a 1-story with a steeple. Yet when we get inside, there's elevators in that bitch. There's a penthouse in that whole like how big is the church really?
We don't know. We don't know. I went with the fact that, you know, my childhood and adulthood crush, Pam Grier, in the movie, she says there's this side of the world and the other side of the world, and they occupy the same space, but they're on top of each other, on the side of each other. So I figured, like, this world's house is a regular 1-story with an attic.
Yeah.
But when you go to the underworld, it's Dracula's mansion.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel bad. Like viewers, if you love this movie and this is like one of your favorite movies, like, you might want to exit now. Because so the movie starts with inexplicable drug dealer A and inexplicable drug dealer B. And they've got 2 white boy, you know, frat guys that come in to buy drugs. Not unusual. I don't know if I would be comfortable buying drugs where I give the thugs the money and then I have to kind of like go on a scavenger hunt to find a specific brick. And behind the brick is my smack. Like, that's not how drug deals go down in the hood.
Maybe I grew up in a different hood. Maybe I grew up in the wrong hood, because here's the thing. I feel like I've lived, and I know you guys are probably listening to my voice and my inflection. You're like, he didn't grow up in the hood. Oh, but I did. And I grew up in, you know, St. Louis, the hoods of St. Louis. I spent time in the hoods of Milwaukee. I lived in the south side of the Bronx, sort of a Burnside for a while, 5-6 years. I've never seen a street that looked this bad.
Yeah.
If I wanted drugs, there are better streets. There are better streets to buy narcotics from.
Yeah.
Than this street.
So we established that it's a hood. Like, okay, got it. Skid Row, bottom of the bottom, which makes the choice to turn it into a nightclub even more questionable. But we'll get there. And then we get the dog. For the first time, we get the dog, the hellhound, if you will. And if you can excuse the fact that, like, the drug deal is wonky, you get this very kind of like haunted place. And then you get this weird figure in the window with the gun. That's like, what is he doing? What is that character doing? We come to learn later that what's his name? What's his boy name? He wasn't Eddie Mack.
He is.
I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember his name. But like, he's his boy. Was it Kirby? No. Kirby's a white boy.
Yeah, I don't remember.
He's in the window, almost like he's like, was he on guard? Like, what was he? You know, we get the hellhound, and we establish that the hound is evil. because of the red eyes. And then we've got this guy kind of like just looking over, and he takes a shot at the dog.
Well, he got chased. So in the very beginning of the movie, the dog is chasing old boy.
Oh, yes.
Right. So the dog's chasing old boy. He has yet to drop his groceries. I don't know what's in the paper bag, but my man was holding the paper bag. You're about to get eaten by a werewolf.
Yeah.
But whatever you bought from the grocery store is very important. So he holds on to the paper bag. And in 1971, or what year was this? 71, 72? When he was getting chased?
He was getting chased. He was getting chased in the present time.
Okay, so here's my problem. There's a remote on the door. There's a remote on the door.
Yes.
He's being chased. He's in the middle of the hood.
Mm-hmm.
His house, he chirps his house. Chirp, chirp.
Mm-hmm.
The door opens. He doesn't drop the groceries. He makes it inside. Thank God. He goes up, and instead of going to bed, he leans out the window with, a rifle, and he starts shooting the dog. Now, he shoots the dog once, hits the dog square in the shoulder. Yeah. The dog doesn't flinch. He's not concerned. He doesn't retreat. So this is already weird to me.
And then the very next scene is when the white boys are buying the drugs. Mm-hmm. The rollers pull up and they run into the house, and classic horror fashion, they're in the haunted house. They think they're safe. They're not safe. Creature from the shadows pulls them out. Boom. So, okay, we established some stuff right here that the house is haunted.
Yep.
Like if you didn't know that you were watching Bones and you just happened to back in the day when people flicked a channel, you can see right off the bat the house is haunted. The dog is a hellhound, and this is not a place that people should be. And so then this brings us to, we've got our young crew. We've got Khalil Kane, and his boys, his partner, and I guess his sister. They are certainly a United Nations crew. Just in terms of the ambiguity of their race, and they show up, hands clapped, super excited because Khalil Kane has bought this property, and they are going to turn it into a nightclub. Inexplicable decision number 2, right? It doesn't make sense just because of A, the neighborhood, B, the building is so decrepit. It's so decrepit. I guess it makes sense, but I feel like a better screenwriter would have found a better reason to put these people in this location. But this is the choice that the movies make. So now our kids our young adults, our main characters are in this home or church or hotel, whatever it is. And there's rats and there's blood everywhere. It's all fucked up. And nobody says we should second guess this. Nobody says we should think to do something else.
There's a mandible. There's a jaw.
Yes.
On the floor. And somebody suggests it might belong to a cat.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, that's a big cat. And so they kick it. And that's the end of the conversation about the jaw with the human teeth with the fresh blood on it.
And this is, and this goes to, John and I used to sometimes have a conversation about how a movie has to happen, right? You want to put people in a situation where things have to happen. But to me, this is what makes a movie poor, because things don't have to happen in a way that doesn't make sense, right? Things can happen in a way that's still okay, I'm in a horror movie, and things are logical. The idea that people would come in, see fresh blood on the floor, a human jaw, and still be like, yep, this is the place, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. And the beauty of making a film, I think, and maybe they weren't thinking about this then, but I think the beauty of making a horror film with Black people is throwing in that trope of we ain't finna do the same shit that white people finna do.
Yes.
So I think there were opportunities to hide the warnings.
Yeah.
A mirror falls. something, a door gets slammed,
Yeah.
the sink turns on and some weird gook comes out the sink, a whole jaw on the floor is like,
Yeah, that's
that's a
because I
lot.
mean, it's a good point because if you look at this moment in other horror movies, the property usually has some sort of promise, right?
Redeeming
Like
factors, redeeming qualities.
exactly, like there's a charm to it. Yeah, all we need to do is just put a little paint on, or all we need to do this price is a steal. I can't believe we got it for this price. Now you come to learn later that there's a million bodies underneath the clubber. All of that comes later, but this place is in such decay, in such a bad neighborhood, and these characters seemingly ignore all of these factors, right? To make a nightclub. And then we get to the to another part, and they're sleeping there.
Yeah, that's
They're sleeping there. Like even if they were like, yo, we found this property, it's abandoned, but it's in a great area. This club is gonna be popping, and they work on it during the day and go home at night. Right? Like it does not make sense that they would spend the night there.
yeah. For what? And they come from relatively good stock. Their fathers made some money. They live behind the
Yeah.
gate. You find out later. Yeah, there's no heat
Yeah.
in this place. Like, why are you camping out here?
Yeah. And
You
again,
know?
I understand a movie has to happen. It's kind of like, it reminds me of the Olympics. In the Olympics when like when they're doing the vaults or something like that, the judges give them credit for difficulty. So, they're going to score them. And if it's a really difficult score, they're going to, score them. Like instead of vault, think of like the floor exercise where they hit
Yeah.
all four corners, right?
Yeah.
As the gymnast makes mistakes, they start to deduct points, right? So again, I don't come into this movie wanting to hate it. And I'm actually giving it some points for a degree of difficulty. I'm giving it some points because I do like the overall premise. I'm giving it some points because I am genuinely kind of scared and unnerved. The director has done a good job, but these decisions that the story takes I'm giving deductions. I'm steadily giving deductions on this film because the decisions that the characters are making don't make any sense.
I'll tell you
Right?
what it feels like. It feels
Mm-hmm.
like they spent a lot of time thinking about the major points, the major
Yes.
scenes, like on their whiteboard. They had scene, 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 and then when they were going through like how to transition, how to get them there, they were like, "It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
Just
matter.
get them there."
Just get them. Just get them in the Hell House.
Yeah.
Right. Right on cue, we've got Pam Grier and her inexplicably hot daughter. Who are stay out this house.
Mm-hmm.
Standard trope. Get away from there. We
Yeah.
got the old guy across the street, the bald head. Get away from there.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's telling them to get away from there, and they're like, "No, we're gonna stay. We're gonna stay tonight." Right. And immediately, like spooky shit starts happening. Eventually, to fast forward, they get into the basement of the house and go through a locked door and find the skeleton of Jimmy Bones with a knife in his chest. Still, we're not abandoning our business plan. Like at this point, we're still not abandoning the business plan.
Nope.
To rewind it a little bit, while they're exploring the property for the first time, they discover the Hellhound.
So
And put him in a car.
Yeah.
Like,
Now
what the fuck?
This, and you guys, I don't know. My listeners may have to forgive me here, but this I blame completely on the white girl.
Yeah.
There's no reason to adopt the dog.
Yes.
The dog's clearly been living in this
full
house.
on adopt the dog.
Full on adopt. The dog snapped at you. It it scared you when it took the burger. You let the dog out. You can let the dog out. You let the dog free.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I know these kids were mixed. This is how, if I was confused before, because I hadn't seen the mother yet. If I thought they was just light skinned, this is the moment I was like, oh no, y'all mixed. Because everybody was cool with the dog. It was one rebuttal. Hey, the dog don't, shouldn't come in the car, and then somebody said, "I'll let the dog in," and everybody was cool with it. You couldn't
Yeah.
put the damn dog in my car.
Listen. Even if I had gone through all the red flags that this movie has presented, the moment I find out that there's a dog upstairs, I'm like, I'm out. I'm done. I'm done. And
A jet black wolf. Look, there was nothing redeeming about the dog. The dog wasn't like, it didn't transform into a beagle.
It wasn't a
like,
puppy. It wasn't a cute. Look,
it was a killer. That survived in an abandoned ghost house on its own for who knows how long.
Stole that woman's burger.
Stole her burger and would have taken her hand, and like as soon as you touched the skeleton, it barked again. Like,
and then I'm like, what kind of fucking duplicitous dog is this? Like the first time we met you, dog, you was chasing niggas and killing niggas, and now you low key. Okay, put a pin in that because I want to come back to the dog.
Nothing pisses me off more in this movie than that moment right there. Just want to say,
yeah. So, we get in the basement, we get to the Jimmy Bones, and then at some point in the movie, we get the flashback, right? And the flashback is when we find out what happened to Jimmy Bones. And so Jimmy Bones, decides to take a meeting with Clifton Powell's character, Jay Bird, because Jay Bird and Jimmy are like hella cool. And we kind of get the sense that like Jay Bird ain't on the up and up. This is Clifton Powell's character. And so, the meeting is later in the day. We find out that Pam Greer's Pearl is like a seer, and she's like, I got a bad omen, don't go. But he's like, I got to go to the meeting anyway.
She got them sister locks in.
Exactly.
Sister locks.
Exactly.
Tell me now.
We meet our villains, Ricky Harris's, rest in peace, Ricky Harris, Eddie Mack. And then we meet Michael T. Weiss, who is Detective Loopy Lou. We get there and basically everybody is like, hey, we're going to sell drugs in the hood. Right? Like everybody's like, listen, this new shit is about to hit. It's called crack. We're all going to get rich. And Jimmy Bones is like, nah, I don't want to sell crack to my people. I'm just going to say no. I y'all peace.
Right.
And at some point, Jimmy Bones' refusal to sell crack in the hood prompts our two villains to pull their guns out and force Jimmy Bones to take a hit of the rock.
Can I just say here,
yeah.
The moment Snoop's character, Jimmy Bones, enters the screen is the moment this movie became watchable for me.
Yes.
And I don't know if it was because I was expecting a subpar performance from Snoop's. Sorry about that, Unc. But I was.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watched what he was doing, again, we kind of touched on this last week with Attack the Block. It's so easy to overdo this.
Yes.
It's so easy to do it wrong. But he was doing everything right. And I was like, did Snoop have an acting coach or something?
I mean,
like
he
that?
was kind of made for this character.
He was made for it, but this also, let me know, it solidified why Snoop has had a 40-year career and why Snoop has been able to reinvent himself every decade to fit what he needs to fit, from being a gangster and defeating, being acquitted on a murder trial, to Martha, to the Olympics. Like, I'm like, oh, this makes sense because you can do anything. There are some people in this world who could do anything.
Yes.
And at that moment, I was like, my bad. I forgot.
Yes. Yep. I agree. Snoop is the best part of this movie. Like, Snoop is the best part of this movie. And this flashback, this setup is actually the most interesting part of the movie. It's the part that's most compelling. And it's not new. This is not a new trope, a revenge horror. Character A dies bloody death. Spirit comes back seeking revenge against those that wronged him. This is a common trope. It's happening in the hood. It's surrounding Black people. There's myth. All of that is cool. Cool. Perfect. They make Snoop hit the rock. And then then shoot him. I get what they were trying to do, which is everybody's got like all of the witnesses here because Pam Grier shows up inexplicably, and you got Snoop's homie, who's supposed to be his right hand man, but was totally disarmed and couldn't be helpful at all. And then we get to like, listen, all right, everybody's got to be involved in this. So everybody takes turns stabbing Jimmy Bones. everybody literally, like they're hitting a blunt. Everybody takes turns stabbing Jimmy Bones so that nobody can point the finger at the other person, so that we're all kind of guilty here. Which I don't know. Like, I'm not a criminal. Is that common? Is that,
one here's I don't.
I guess there can be no snitching if we were all here and all in on it.
Here's the problem. Going back, like, I don't know what was in. I've never smoked crack personally, but I don't know what was in the crack to make Jimmy cut old boy, because that's where the shit went bad. He hit the pipe. Everybody was watching him get woozy. He pulled out the knife, and I guess because he felt like he had got a bad rock or whatever, he cuts old boy. Then they empty the guns into him. Now, the person who suggests everybody stab Bones
is the cop.
Is a cop. But if you're a cop, you know that anything done under duress or at gunpoint, you can't be held liable for anyway.
Right.
So if you point a gun at me and you say, Andrew, I got a gun at your head, I want you to smack this old lady. If I smack the old lady, I can't go to jail for assault because you had a gun to my head.
Yeah.
So you telling me to stab Jimmy is pointless. We're still not in trouble. You know what I mean? And so I thought it was weird that the police suggested that, because he would know that does not implicate anybody else.
I mean, I get what they're trying to do. Like, I kind of get, like, we're all in this together. They all kill Jimmy and decide to bury him in the building. And that's the end of our time in the past, right? This is where the movie starts to really wobble for me, which is, if I was involved in the murder and cover up of a person, I wouldn't live across the street from where that shit happened, or down the street from where that shit happened, for like 30 fucking years. So the fact that like Pam Grier still lives in the neighborhood, right? The fact that the homie, his boy, his right-hand man, still lives across the street, and they don't explain to us why. We don't, like, why is he still there? Was Jimmy haunting niggas from the second day? Is he trying to make things right? Like, why is this brother on call with a gun 30 years later across the street from where his man got murdered? It does not make sense for everybody to still be in such proximity of the neighborhood. If Clifton Powell's people own that building, it doesn't, and you have a body in there, doesn't it make sense to just fucking flatten the building? To just, just condemn the building, put a slab of concrete over it, like, it doesn't make sense that you would just leave that building in disrepair, knowing that you've got a dead body inside. These are things that don't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's so easy to go in there and find that body in the basement, whereas if you destroy it, I guess he thinks maybe if they destroy it, they might find it, digging up or building something new. And maybe they didn't have Pam Grier and his other homeboy didn't have enough money to relocate. But I think within 30 years, you could devise a plan.
That's what I'm saying.
To get to another.
It just doesn't seem like, because the first time we see Pam Grier, like, she's casually walking by the building, like her and her daughter, like they're coming from the grocery store. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I could not casually walk past a building where I knew I stabbed a man and just be about my business. That just doesn't make sense. That, like, like if I accidentally hit a dog in front of my yard, like, I might have to move, right? Yeah. I don't, So, like, the fact that they're still in the neighborhood, and we know for a fact that homie that be out the window all day, every day, and Pam Grier's character know each other.
Yeah.
They know each other. Yeah. So, like, what are they still doing in this neighborhood? It does not make sense.
Yeah.
Now, then I get a little wobblier, which is the supernatural elements of this movie don't make any sense. Okay? Straight up. The supernatural elements of this movie don't make any sense. And I want to go through a couple of them. What's the supernatural nature of the dog?
I'm pretty sure Snoop said in the meeting when they were like, Snoop, we want you to play this character. He was like, there has to be a dog in it.
Right. But the dog...
That's it.
Like, the dog morphs into women. The dog is allowed to leave. Because, like, at first I got to thinking, maybe the dog is, like, a part of, like, Jimmy Bones' spirit. Right?
Sure.
And he kind of controls the dog from, like, the afterlife. That would make sense if, like, the dog was attached to the house. But when the dog gets in the car and goes to the people's home, like what's the reach? What's the supernatural? Yeah, exactly. What's the supernatural reach?
Leash? Yeah.
Right. And if Jimmy Bones has the power to supernaturally control a dog, why is the lock on that door what's keeping Jimmy from getting out?
If all the dog had to do was eat some people,
he could have did that shit 10 days after Jimmy died.
Could have did that shit immediately.
Right. You get what I'm saying? So because what you learn is that, and they show, and it's cool. It's a cool element that, like, every time the dog eats, Jimmy starts to get a little bit more, bit more on him. Yeah. But let's be clear.
Not eaten in 30 years?
Exactly. That's the point that doesn't make any sense, right? Actually, we see the dog eat 3 people. The 2 white boys at the beginning and the DJ. And just those 3 people is enough to take Jimmy Bones. Just those 3 people is enough to take Jimmy Bones from skeleton to full-on new flesh. And in 30 years, the dog couldn't eat 3 people to bring Jimmy back. To me, that's
tough.
That's I cannot get around that. And again, some people might be like, "Oh, you guys are being too hard. Oh, you guys are nitpicking. Oh, it's just a movie." Well, that's just what the fuck we do.
Clearly, we come into the building to wake the dog up. Maybe the dog was hibernating. Like, there's a lot, but then you got to tell me some of that.
Yes.
You have to explain that, and it just takes a scene. It just takes a scene
to make it make sense.
Yeah.
To make it make sense, right? You could have had the old bald guy, the homeboy, give our characters some pertinent piece of information about the dog, right? About the property, about, whatever. Nothing. And so we get Jimmy Bones resurrected, and he goes on his revenge tour, which is A-okay. That's exactly what we're here for. Right?
Yep.
This is cool. I'm with it. And all is good. Everybody that wronged him in the past had to get got. Loved it. Where the movie officially falls off the cliff for me is when the decapitated heads get to talking shit. That was it.
Let me tell you something. Nobody was funnier than Homie once he lost his head.
Ricky Harris?
Who's the main
Ricky Harris's character was Eddie Mack.
Eddie Mack.
Yeah.
Eddie Mack hated Jimmy Bones' guts. Hated his guts.
Right.
Killed the man. Smiled when he stabbed him.
Mm-hmm.
Soon as he decapitated him, he was like, "Hey, nigga, we square."
Right.
Now I got some jokes.
Yes.
What the fuck you got? First of all, why are you still talk? Like, what part of the game is this?
Why are you talking? Why do you have so much? Why does your head have so much charisma? Right? Like,
and this. Why are you introducing other motherfuckers to their death? Like, now when he go to kill somebody else, he be like, "You next, nigga." Like, why is that you? Why are you?
Yeah. This is Drew. This is where the movie fell apart for me. This is where I got upset. So, like, the energy that you guys might feel is because of that fucking decision, right? I gave this movie all the respect that it required as a viewer. Same thing. Like I came into it like, okay, I'm going to watch.
Yeah.
We got a million choices. I'm going to watch. And
Yeah.
I watch, and I was just like, yeah, this movie's kind of fucking scary. The
Yeah.
characters started making decisions. I started making deductions. But okay. As long as we can stick the landing or even come into a bumpy landing, like I could still be okay. And I'm not saying this movie is terrible, because it's not. But what I am saying is, when it turns into a fucking humor, when it turns into a comedy, when you have these heads talking shit, in my opinion, you've done a disservice to what you've done up until that point in the movie.
Yeah.
This movie was not that. It was not jokes. It was not funny. It was not hardy horror. It was blood, guts, horror. And then once you get these heads talking and talking shit, now I'm like, I don't know what the fuck this is. I don't know what this movie is. But what I do know is that just let the air out of whatever it had going
now
for
it becomes, Death Becomes Her, or like Beetlejuice, or like something.
But at least those movies are like that from the beginning to the end.
Now it becomes that. It goes from being, Pet Sematary to, something way different.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes less is more.
Yes.
If Jimmy Bones would have just off these fools in the most brutal way possible, got his woman back, said what's up to his daughter, and then whatever, movie ended. It's like, cool. That's all you had to do. Whoever made that decision, now they messed up.
And when you have the heads get to talking, it immediately makes Jimmy Bones less scary. And this is what we've been waiting on this whole movie. This whole movie, it's been building up to Jimmy Bones' return. Yeah. And Jimmy Bones returns, and he's this killer pimp and his great shots, and he's got a switchblade, and it's just like, oh shit, the bad guy is free, and he kills our two thugs on the block, and we're like, oh shit, like he's on his revenge tour. And then then he kills Eddie Mack, and then Eddie Mack gets to talking, the decapitated head gets to talking, and at that point I'm like, oh, the rest of this movie is full of shit. The rest of this movie is on some bullshit, because why are these niggas talking? Right? Like why are they talking? This doesn't make any sense.
Here's what I like to do in moments like this. I like to think about like really simple ways you would have fixed it. So I immediately thought of like what I would have done with that moment if I wanted to get them from point A, where they were being murdered, to point B, which is throwing them into the demon wall, the wall of souls. How would I have done that in the most appropriate way?
Right.
And then, so I'll tell you mine, and then if you have one, I'd love to hear you.
No, you go for it.
I think it would have been way scarier and way more effective if you would have just maimed them. If Jimmy Bones would have took their legs, but left them alive and drugged them through the streets, whatever, to the wall, so that the fear is from a living person who's about to face death and not a decapitated head who's telling jokes, that seals the movie for me. Then I'm on here talking about what a great ending that was. Immediately, that's what I thought of. I was like, why didn't he just why just take the head and shove the head in there? Like, cut the man's legs off, whatever, stab him in the liver, whatever, drag him there, throw him in there. That's the most brutal way to enact your revenge.
Yeah. At that point, I was disappointed. Like at that point, I was disappointed. And I started doing what you did, Drew, which was like, I started thinking, okay, like, how could I have made this movie better? And that's when I started realizing how many holes the story had.
Yeah.
And it kind of was at a point where it's just like, I don't know. I'd have to do a totally different story. Yeah. Right. It works to a certain point. Like, some of the decisions that the characters make are forgivable. Like, maybe I'm being too harsh on like them choosing that place to start a nightclub. But it all seems like it happens in like 3 days, which doesn't seem believable. From the time they first find the property to the time that they're throwing their first party, really fast.
And brother, the place don't look any better.
Right.
Like when they open the nightclub, they've done nothing. Like there's been no
They just-
renovations.
they
There's
just
been
hit
no
the-
paint. They just,
Yeah. The plumb. There's no permit that they were able to get in order.
I don't even know. I didn't even see him print up no flyers. Like
Yes.
they've done nothing to this place.
And imagine somebody opening a club on Skid Row, like literally feet away from the heroin. I mean, like this is the hot spot.
I can imagine that. And here's why.
Mhm.
Because I went to a really nice restaurant. I got invited to a really
Downtown.
nice place to eat.
Yeah, it's
And I was
kind
like,
of
oh, the
fucked up.
restaurant can't be here. And I was like,
Yeah.
on Skid
Yeah.
Row. There it is. Food was
Like
delicious.
I said, the food was delicious. Fish was delicious. It had potential. Like overall, like I like black horror. I love it. I love it when it's smart, and I think that like a soul quest for revenge makes a lot of sense. I think it's a great thing. Jimmy Bones is double crossed out for revenge. Coming to find out that like Cynthia, played by Bianca Lawson, is his daughter. That should have been a more monumental moment in the film, but it did not have any real weight to it at all. Like it wasn't a huge reveal for her. It just kind of like it just happened too quick.
Yeah.
I think this movie might have done better if we had less characters. Right? Like we've got Khalil Kane, we've got the DJ, we've got the homie, we've got the sister. Like if they had spent more time, you know what I mean? Like, in the house or in the apartment, like if there was more like creepy stuff that happened.
Yeah.
And again, like the stuff that happened was kind of scary, but it just all felt rushed. It felt like we had too many characters, and the characters were not making decisions that real humans would have made in terms of like the red flags. Like even Bianca Lawson's character, like she's not a hoe, but she certainly is fast, right? She's spending the night in the haunted house. She sees a spirit. Like she's in the house and looks at a spirit dead ass and still goes, I'm going to spend the night to make out with this light-skinned man. Like it doesn't make any sense.
I've smashed in some questionable places. There's been some questionable locations that I've gotten a piece at.
Right.
Would I have gone over there if Bianca Lawson was there to hit back in my day? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Would I have ignored the ghost? Yeah, possibly.
You're full of shit.
Possibly.
If I was actively smashing, then I'd be like, I'd wait until afterward. It's like I'd wait until it was over to be like, yo, you're not gonna believe it. There's a fucking thing over there. Right? But
I gotta go.
Yeah. But no, it doesn't make sense that she would see a ghost and not tell nobody that she was with. Like,
yeah.
I saw some shit, Yeah. But she just had to have it. I mean, he is Khalil Kane. You got to have it.
And
that's hilarious
what
though.
also is unrealistic is that you never really see two light skinned niggas together like that in love.
Yeah.
One of them
was special.
One of them should have been dark skinned. Like, that's also very unbelievable, bro.
That's ridiculous. That's because it's so true. Because Drew, I'm not lying.
I was like,
I said the same shit when they was making out. I was like, both of these niggas are the same color, right? Like it's weird. Like the light skinned stars don't always align like that. It's like one of those like
align. They rarely ever align.
Like Galileo knows the next time two motherfuckers with that complexion are going to be that close.
Yeah, one of them had to be, a demon spawn because, like, what? How?
Yeah,
no.
That's and she that fun that ain't got no man. Like, it didn't make sense. But it does beg the question. I mean, we're poking fun at it, but I think you're right. Like, I think that like what percentage of men do you think would be like, man, you can smash this baddie, but you just got to spend the night in a haunted house?
A
I think it's a
large
pretty high
percentage,
percentage of men
bro.
that would do that. Yeah.
A large percent, and they would convince themselves that they're not scared, and then once they're done, they would get up out of there.
And here's what's interesting. This would make what you, and this to me makes a funnier movie, which is the man's desire to smash. How many red flags he's willing to ignore because he's still committed to wanting to smash, right? You get what I'm saying? So like at a certain point, like you imagine that it's just too much. This is just too scary. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder where that line is, you know, like.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. How far would you travel? You know, what would you overlook? I personally have committed crimes in order to smash. So, you know,
This movie is kind of like a biopic for for Brother Drew. Yeah. So I think, I mean, all in all, like it's one of those things where when a football team is doing poorly and you start pointing fingers and you start saying who's to blame, right? Is it the quarterback? Is it the offensive coordinator? Is it the O-line? Is it the wide receiver? For me, for Bones, it's not the quarterback. It's not the director. Right? It's not the actors. It's the story. It's the story fails a dope premise. The story betrays an acclaimed director. The story makes a movie that I think could have been a better Blackbuster and more beloved Blackbuster. And I think it makes it a otherwise forgettable, laughable movie. Is that too harsh?
I'll say one thing about our beloved director, because I let him off the hook earlier, but now I'm going to put him on the hook a little bit. Been on enough sets to know that if you see something happening, if you read something in the script, because before the movie even gets started and they peg you as a director, they're sending you the script, right? So he had to look at that script. He had to see the talking heads. And I don't know if he fought back and they said, no, we're keeping it. And he just was like, you know what? I still want to work with Snoop. I still want to do this. Fair. But there's definitely a point in time.
Maybe it was worse, Drew. Like maybe it was worse. Like maybe he fought and what we got was what was the best that he could do for us.
I never thought about that. That's amazing. Yeah, maybe it was worse.
Yeah.
Maybe it was worse.
Let's get into some awards.
Let's do it.
MVP. Who would you say is the MVP of Bones?
Last week I went with the not obvious choice, but I'm gonna go with the obvious choice here, I think, and I'm gonna say Snoop.
I think it's Snoop.
And I'm going to say Snoop because, in a way, it's not the obvious choice. I did not expect his acting performance to be this good. And you know an acting performance is good when you're just accepting it and you're not saying, oh, that's weird, that's unbelievable. When you're just in the moment, you're like, oh, man, he's really convincing me. And I did not expect Snoop to be able to convince me that he's a ghost, that he's a demon, you know, that he, you know, is beloved in his community. Like none of that. On cue, and he did every single one of those things. So MVP.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, you know, not only is he the star of this movie, he looks the part. You know, Snoop's evil face. You know, to be such a jovial guy that we've you know now know him to be. He's got a mad dog like a motherfucker, right? And so I think that this was a character that he played very well. You know, we talked about how, you know, sometimes the pressure to do more, you know, an actor can sometimes decide to do a lot more. And this, in my opinion, Snoop did just enough. He did just enough when he was kind of like walking and talking. So I agree. I think that he's the best part of this movie. It's a damn shame. I mean, I understand why we can't see more of him because, you know, I think a good horror movie works where the bad guy doesn't really get revealed fully into the third act. Yeah. I understand that. But like the flashback scenes were the best parts of the movie. Literally the best parts of the movie. And he's the key point in that. So I agree. Okay, LVP. You got a lot of choices here. LVP. Who's the LVP of Bones?
Got a lot of choices here. I'm going to go with the white girl.
Okay.
And
And this is a non-racist answer, right? You're not just doing that because okay.
yeah,
Tell me
no.
about it.
And the reason is because I think none of this happens if she's a little more afraid. I think if the white girl is like, like this is scary to me.
Right.
I think her
Right.
brothers, listen. And I think if she doesn't fall in love with the dog, if she doesn't let the dog out, she was the one who fed the dog, decided to keep the dog. And this is what white women across America do with dogs anyway. So it was on par.
That part was realistic.
It was realistic, but if you don't invite the dog into your life, I feel like a lot of this can be avoided by just being like this. It's a dog. It's a scary hellhound, and she kissing the dog in the face.
Yeah. For me, there's so many.
Oh yeah.
There's so many. Remote control door with the groceries. The fuck is he doing? Right?
Useless.
He's useless. He's pointless. He serves no purpose. I really don't like Pam Grier's character. Like, I feel like you know what the fuck is up. Why don't you know where your daughter is? Right? Like she's in her bra and panties in the haunted house, humping on light-skinned niggas. Why don't you know this? Right? You know, if you're a seer, this is the thing. She lives maybe half a block away from like an open revolving door to hell, and you're a seer, and you don't actively sense the energy coming from that house all day, every day, and you're like this medium. And so you mean to tell me you've been ignoring that shit for years, and you raise your little girl there and stay in close proximity to the open gates of hell?
Yeah.
I think she's my LVP. There are pointless characters. There are useless characters like the DJ and his brother. I hated these guys. These characters were dumb. They were stupid. They didn't make any sense. I didn't care when any of them got killed. They're relatively pointless. They were there to die. And I know, like, look, in certain horror movies, there are certain characters that are there to die. I get it, right? Yeah. They're just kind of like here to die. But I think like the LVP is the character whose decisions make the least amount of sense, and that's Pam Grier's character. That is absolutely, in my opinion, Pearl. At least bald-headed homeboy didn't have no family. Didn't have nobody to look out for. But like Pam Grier, her character has a daughter, and she's a medium. She knows what time it is. The fact that they are still on that block, right, means that not only is she a bad parent, but she's doing pretty poor at life. Like, at no point in time did she go to nursing school and go like, I'm gonna move me and my little girl up out of here, right? Like just
get your LVN or nothing.
The whole life being the Skid Row psychic. No, that to me, that's LVP type shit.
Golly, man. And she was, she was never mad that her daughter was in there tossing it back either. Every time she came and got her, she was just like, come here, baby. She wasn't like, goddamn pants on.
What are you doing up in there? Yeah. Like it didn't, like it first of all, it didn't make sense that she would even be down there. It's just the LVP. Like for me, ultimately she sets herself on fire to save her daughter, but you didn't even do that. You didn't even do that right, Mom. Like at the end of the movie, your daughter is gargling maggots, right? Like, like you failed. You failed, Pam Grier. You didn't keep Jimmy safe. When the tarot cards told you to keep him at home, you didn't insist that he would be there. You show up, you stab him. You stab the love of your life. His soul can't rest because you live a block away.
and your dress is under him.
And
you're laying on your dress for 30 years.
Laying on your dress for 30 years. His soul can't rest because he's so mad at you. And every time he wanted us saying he'd look across the street and see that you still there, psychic medium shits. You're raising my daughter around this bullshit.
Right.
Like that's why Bones is so mad. Like Bones is so mad because like fuck, like so yeah, like she's the one. Like she had the premonition. She could. I mean, ultimately, I don't want us to skip past Clifton Powell's character, but at least his villainy makes sense.
Yeah, he got up out of there.
He wanted what Bones had. He created a situation that he's a double crosser for sure. Like
Sure.
he's a double crosser for sure. I'm not saying like there's not a ton of redeeming qualities, but at least he's the type of villain that makes sense for like a special interaction between Bones and him. Right? And maybe you don't like his right hand man, like homie with everybody had to get got, but it was just kind of like, but you was my man, and we had those lines, but it just went so quick. But for me, the LVP is definitely Pam Grier. She makes the worst decisions ever. At least Clifton Powell's character, he moved to the suburbs, got himself a white woman who was already knocked up because that ain't his kid. That baby was not mixed. The white girl was certified white. She was not light skinned. Yeah.
That hair was straight and that nose was narrow.
I didn't want a piece of yours, Jimmy. I wanted my own.
But yeah, he got out there, man. He got himself a gate.
Mm-hmm.
Like can't be mad at Clifton Powell's character.
And she survived. And the white girl survived.
Because she brought the hell on the brothers. Okay? She made a decision that got all these brothers fucked up. And
I mean, was it her fault ultimately? Was it the courtship of the dog? Because Khalil Kane's character buys the property because he's trying to show his dad. He's trying to show his dad that he can make something of himself, right? And he knows his dad comes from the hood, and probably like his whole life he's been overcompensating, and his heart is in the right place. So maybe Khalil Kane's character just spent so much time in the burbs that he just doesn't recognize danger because he didn't grow up around it.
Yeah, like King, like T.I.'s son, out here trying to stand on business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he makes the poor decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of bad characters here, which would have made their deaths all the more satisfying. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is that like Bones' revenge is ultimately non-consequential. The villains aren't villain enough, right? Like, maybe if we spent more time in the past, I'd come to care about, like, I hate the cop. Of course I hate the cop, but like, give me more of a reason why, if
spend more time building up Bones in the community.
Yes.
You have to love him more.
Yes.
If you love him more, then when he gets off, then you're like, oh, everybody got to die.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. And then you've got these other things that like don't really make sense, which is we're led to believe that Khalil Kane's character like grew up around Bones. Like the giving the money out the car, like he was like a little bitty boy.
Yeah.
And then that begs the question, what's the age gap between our two light-skinned lovers, right? Because if the little boy is at least 5, 6, or 7 when he is, interacting with Bones in real life, then when was Bianca Lawson's character born?
Mm-hmm. And was she around, but just being like kept? No, she wasn't.
We have to assume maybe at that point that the mom was pregnant with her.
Yeah.
That so that like she's pregnant at the time that Bones gets killed.
Yeah.
And so then maybe there's like a 5-year gap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not as egregious as them both being light skinned. Not nearly as egregious. Cut that shit out.
All right. Now we've lambasted this movie. But now we have to give it some awards on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being an all-time classic, 1 being a movie that got made. How do you rank Bones?
I thought about this because of my ranking last week,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna go with 2.5.
Yeah.
Fists.
Yeah. That feels right. I'm going 2. I was in 3 category. I was Drew. I watched this movie outside in the dark.
Okay. Proud of you.
The fog was coming in. You know what I mean? Like I'd set this movie up for success, right? And like the floor exercise in the Olympics, the movie comes out, couple of backflips, a triple Suzuki, whatever the fuck it is, like lands it, and I'm just like, okay, all right, it's a little scary. There's some inexplicable shit, and then she get to like breakdancing like the girl from New Zealand, like
Ray Gun.
Yeah, and then it's just kind of like the movie just starts to fall apart for me. And so even good directing and good acting cannot escape the very poor story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very poor story. So let us know what you think. Like, let us know, as y'all always do, if we tripping. What I will say is that don't just be commenting just to comment. Rewatch the movie, right? Because I could understand somebody that remembers this movie better than what it actually is.
Sure.
Right? But if you haven't seen it in a while, rewatch it and let us know. I would be hard pressed for somebody out there to tell me that they think this movie is a 4, right? If you give it a 5, you're crazy. This movie does not have the same replay value as Tales from the Hood.
No.
Right? Tales from the Hood is still remotely better. I'm going to wager that this movie is better than Leprechaun in the Hood, which I think is a 1 on arrival. But we'll see. Maybe we'll do that as a bonus, as a torment. But yeah, I think Bones is a good 2 movie. I think it's maybe the kind of movie that you could like put on like a projector in the back of your yard with the volume down while you're having a Halloween party with black people, right? But it's not like I think it's probably good like window dressing, like good ambiance kind of thing.
Yeah,
but not the type of thing that you're gonna pop popcorn for and watch and relive and have fond memories. It's a waste of time in that
only
in
if
that
you're
regard.
Like Dr. Umar, and you're like, Jimmy was the neighborhood, and when he died, the hood went down, and a white woman came in, and that's the only way.
That's the only way. So, hey, Bones, we gave it a shot. We tried it. But let us know what you think. So that's this week's episode. Remember, next week we're doing The First Purge. That's the 2018 version. I'm your boy Tony Bones. Am I Tony Bones? Jimmy Tones? What was my name?
I don't remember.
I'm Tones. It's Tones. Whatever it is, it's Tones. And my boy Andrew Tyree. You'll be here with us next week for The First Purge. Thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. We'll see y'all in a week. Peace. To the max. Peace.
BlackBusters.